In the spring of 1863, when the United States was torn apart by war and uncertainty, the small town of Willow Creek, Virginia, lived in quiet fear. Trains carried soldiers instead of dreams, and letters often brought sorrow instead of hope. Jonathan Whitmore was one of those soldiers. He was not born for war. He had been a schoolteacher, gentle by nature, more comfortable with books than rifles. But duty called, and like many young men, he left his home believing courage meant silence and endurance. Eleanor Brooks had never planned to fall in love with a man destined to leave. She lived with her father near a field that once bloomed with wildflowers before the war trampled it into dust. Eleanor volunteered as a nurse at a local infirmary, tending to wounded soldiers whose eyes carried the weight of loss. She learned to hide her fear behind kindness and to offer comfort even when her own heart ached. They met on a quiet afternoon when Jonathan was brought in with an injured shoulder. Eleanor cleaned his wound carefully, her hands steady, her voice calm. Jonathan noticed the gentleness in her touch, the way she spoke to him as if he were more than another wounded body. In her presence, the pain eased, not just in his shoulder, but in his spirit. Eleanor, in turn, saw something rare in Jonathan's eyes, not bitterness or anger, but quiet kindness. Their connection grew in stolen moments. Short conversations in hallways, exchanged smiles, and letters written when Jonathan returned to duty. Each letter carried pieces of their hearts, folded carefully between words of hope and fear. Jonathan wrote about the stars above the camps, imagining Eleanor looking at the same sky. Eleanor wrote about the changing seasons, promising that the wildflowers would bloom again. War tested them relentlessly. Months passed without word. Eleanor feared the worst each time a train arrived. Jonathan faced death more than once, clinging to Eleanor's letters like lifelines. In the chaos of battle, thoughts of her voice, her steady presence, reminded him of who he was beyond the uniform. One winter, news reached Willow Creek that Jonathan's regiment had suffered devastating losses. Eleanor's hands trembled as she waited, day after day, praying for a letter that did not come. Yet she continued nursing, continued caring, believing that love meant faith even in silence. Jonathan returned the following spring, thinner, quieter, but alive. When Eleanor saw him walking toward the infirmary, tears blurred her vision. They did not speak at first. They simply stood beneath the open sky, holding hands, understanding that survival itself was a miracle. The war had changed them, but it had not destroyed what they had built. Peace did not erase the scars. Jonathan struggled with memories that haunted his sleep. Eleanor learned that love also meant patience, listening, and healing together. They married quietly, without celebration, believing their bond needed no audience. They built a life from simplicity, shared meals, evening walks, and the comfort of knowing they had survived together. Years later, as the nation healed, wildflowers returned to the fields. Jonathan taught children again. Eleanor continued caring for others, and their love became a quiet testament to resilience. It was not born of ease or fantasy, but of endurance, sacrifice, and unwavering care. Under the same American sky that once witnessed war and sorrow, Jonathan and Eleanor found something stronger than fear. They found a love that endured history itself, a love that proved even in the darkest times, the human heart can still choose hope.